So now we will see what is web brainstorming. Sometimes live brainstorming is not possible. According to the working conditions, sometimes it is impossible to conduct live brainstorming. In these situations, an alternative is used, the internet or an intranet, to facilitate the brainstorming process in a collaborative environment. So in this situation, the way that we will adopt in order to conduct this brainstorming session is called web brainstorming, which is based on the use of internet or an intranet facilities in order to conduct this activity in a shared environment. So the next important technique that we will discuss is called prototyping. Prototyping means the partial implementation of a system that we are going to develop. We also use the term model when we are using the term prototyping. So in this technique, the requirement analyst will build a model without the detailed functionality or the code for user to interpret the features of the intended software product. So that particular model, which will be built by the developer, is called the user interface. So it's an iterative process. Iterative means there would be the repetition in the activities while we are conducting prototyping philosophy in order to collect the software requirements. So there are two types of persons involved in this particular activity: users and developers. The users will provide the set of requirements which will be identified by the users, and the developer will build a model or a prototype according to the set of requirements defined by the user. So now we will see the prototyping activities. In order to develop a prototype, the list of activities that we will perform in a repetitive cycle or an iteration will be: number one, listen to customer. The developer and customer meet and decide the known requirements of the software which the developer has to build in the current iteration. Number 2, quick design. On the basis of these set of requirements, the developer will quickly design the requirements. Number 3, prototype construction. After designing the prototype, the developer will implement that quick design into the shape of prototype, which is basically the partial implementation of the software, and that particular prototype is called the user interface. Remember, this is just a model without functionality. So the user interface will have all the necessary controls according to the features, but behind those controls there will be no such functionality that a user can perform in order to using that prototype. So this prototype will be used as a guideline to gather and to understand the set of requirements for the software. So the fourth step or activity in this iteration will be prototype evaluation. So after development of this particular prototype, the developer will deliver the prototype to the customer in order to get his feedback. The feedback from the customer or the user can be based on changes. He will accept or suggest few changes which will be again adopted in the next iteration. So the point to remember is all of these activities in this particular sequence will be performed iteratively unless and until the completion of this prototype. And the completion means you will get all the related requirements of the software. So the point to remember is prototyping is an iterative process. Iteration means repetition. We will repeat the sequenced activities till the completion of our goal. And the prototyping objective is to gather and understand the software requirements of the system with unknown requirements. So prototyping is building user interface without adding detailed functionality for user to interpret the features of the intended software product. So in prototyping, basically we're going to build a user interface without implementation for the user to evaluate and interpret the required functionality of the software which we have to develop. It helps giving better idea of the requirements. So using this technique, you can easily understand the type of the requirements and their implementation details. If there is no software installed at client end for developer, reference and the client is not aware of its own requirements, the developer then creates a prototype based on initially mentioned requirements. So basically प्रोटोटाइपिंग को हम इस सिचुएशन में, इस कंडीशन में अडॉप्ट करते हैं जब हमारा क्लाइंट या कस्टमर उस पर्टिकुलर सॉफ्टवेयर से रिलेटेड फीचर्स को या रिक्वायरमेंट्स को आइडेंटिफाई नहीं कर पाता. सो इन दिस पर्टिकुलर प्रोसेस, on the basis of known and identified requirements in every iteration, the developer will continue to create the prototype in order to get the software requirements. The prototype is shown to the client and the feedback is noted. So the prototype will be given to the client or the customer in order to get the evaluation or to get the feedback. The client feedback serves as an input for requirements gathering. So after this feedback and the basis of this feedback, we will gather the user requirements and we can refine their details.